welcome to HITC Sport. Right, let's get into it. Today I'm going to take a look at the worst ever manager that ever played for your football club. Trust me lads, you will not find a more comprehensive list of utter ineptitude than in this one, I can promise you that. Arsenal Tony Adams. When we think of inspirational Premier League captains, men who'd be tailor-made for management, you'd think Tony Adams, born winner. Unfortunately, the lad couldn't coach his way out of a goddamn paper bag. He's had 4 cracks at management, and each one was an utterly traumatic experience for everyone involved. Failing at Wickham, Portsmouth, Granada and Gabal out the back arse Azerbaijan. Imagine telling the wife that, you know, you can't take her on a holiday because you just spent all your savings on a goddamn season ticket at Fratton Park to see Tony Adams' style of football. You'd be getting divorce papers in the morning. Aston Villa Steve Staunton. I was considering choosing Netflix star Simon Grayson, but no, I'm sorry, nothing beats the utter ineptitude of Steve Staunton. I'm not sure what it is about ginger managers called Steve. They all seem to have about as much tactical nous as a bag of melted Kit Kats. You're not going to find a worse manager in this list. I'm sorry, but you are not. A defender at Villa Park for 7 years in the 90s, the man's first job in management was inexplicably as manager of my goddamn country. He spent a year in the job and impressively presided over Ireland's worst home defeat in 40 years, a 5-2 defeat to Cyprus. Then again, when you're chucking Paddy Kenny behind a defence made of cardboard, what do you actually expect? And then lads, just when you thought our football team couldn't be more of a laughing stock, we needed a last minute goal to beat the plumbers and panel beaters from San Marino. But most unforgivably, this was the man who gave Paul McShane his international debut. Never mind that being a sackable offence, that should have come with a prison sentence for crimes against humanity. In my eyes, putting Paul McShane on the football pitch is about the same as burning down a fucking orphanage. Staunton was eventually replaced by a man who'd won the European Cup, 3 UEFA Cups, 7 Serie A's, a Bundesliga and the Portuguese League title, which was just like marrying a supermodel after spending a year shacked up in a caravan with something out of the hills of eyes. The Ginger Wizard did get one more crack at management with Darlington. Within 5 months, he was sacked after leading them to the foot of League 2, winning 4 of his 23 games in charge. I could honestly be here all day about Steve Staunton. Like, what was the point of Caleb Folan? But honestly, lads, I have to move on because I have to get through 18 other hopeless managers. But to be honest, I really don't think we're going to beat this one. We will try though, don't worry. Stuart Pearce still exists. Bournemouth David James. Not just an eccentric goalie, but also an emergency centre forward. A tactical decision that no doubt had John Mackin fantasising about drowning Stuart Pearce in his sleep. But yeah, David James recently dipped into management with Kerala Blasters out the back arse of India. A Bournemouth goalie during the 12-13 season, his time in management did not go well, lasting less than a year and presiding over an 11-game winless run before getting sacked last Christmas. Brighton Dean Saunders. A prolific striker at Brighton for a couple of years in the mid-80s, Dean Saunders was clearly not cut out for management of any sort. He was relegated with Doncaster before inexplicably being given the gig at Wolves in January 2013, with the club 9 points off the playoffs.
I'm determined and ambitious. I want to get back into the Premier League.
Yeah. It took him 10 games to win a match, and within 4 months, the club had plummeted into the 3rd tier. He'd go on to have a short kick at Crawley Town, before doing his very best to set fire to the good foundations laid at Chesterfield Town. Burnley Brian Laws. The first man on this list who's actually gone on to manage his former club. Anyway, Brian Laws started his career as a defender with Burnley. Did alright, but his time in management has just been an utter pancake of useless. What? He's been a manager for 869 games spanning 4 clubs, racking up an overall win percentage of 36%. Lads, if you recorded the scores in your GCSEs, you'd be scrubbing toilets down your local Burger King. Chelsea, Gianfranco Zola. Alright, Gianfranco Zola was one hell of a player, ripping defences to shreds during his 7 years at Stamford Bridge, but as a manager, not so much. He's a nice guy, but I think his problem is that he was too nice. Do you really see him barking at the left back or telling the goalie they'd be better suited to working down his local Tesco's? No, the man is more likely to make them a cup of tea and stick on the Frozen soundtrack. He was sacked at West Ham after steering the club to 17th of May 2010, before failing to inspire promotion at Watford. He was then sacked by Cagliari after just 3 months, before adding another dismissal to his CV at Qatar club Al Arabi, before inexplicably replacing Gary Rowett at Birmingham City in December 2016 with the club 7th and laying outside the playoffs on goal difference. I'm actually kind of impressed how he managed to take such a good position and still turn that into a relegation battle, winning 2 of his 24 games in charge. Like, how? Honestly, that is impressive levels of terrible.
My dream, let us say my ambition, is to be Chelsea manager someday in the future.
I don't want to be mean, Zola, but I have a mouldy sandwich in the fridge that has more chance of becoming Chelsea manager than you. Crystal Palace, Ian Dowie. To be fair, Ian Dowie has managed in 11 years, and now spends his days working as a pundit for Sky, as a sort of trailblazer, you know, proving that, yeah, just because you look like Sloth of the Goonies, you can still make it on TV. Why am I a After the former Southampton forward picked up a relegation with Crystal Palace in 2005, despite them being awarded about 15 penalties, he was then sacked by Charlton after 15 games, where he managed to take 10 years of solid groundwork and good foundations laid by Alan Kerbersley and chucked them down the f***ing toilet within 6 months. The club has never recovered, and Neither is Dowie's career. Sacked after a year at Coventry before again lasting just 15 games at QPR. He did have a crack as assistant manager alongside Alan Shearer at Newcastle. I'm guessing he spent 2 months scratching his arse and showering in the sink because there's no way he was teaching Colaccini how to fucking defend. Everton, ABEL XAVIER. Any remember ABEL XAVIER? That former fullback with the mental haircut? Who spent 3 years at Everton before flushing any rapport he might have had with the fans right down the toilet with a move to Liverpool. The man is currently being given the pretty thankless task of coaching the Mozambique national team, which is probably like trying to teach the Spice Girls how to sing in tune. His previous jobs were an extensive tutorial on how to mess everything up. Lasted 10 games at Olhanense, 27 at Farense, and then just 6 in charge of Deportivo Aves, recording an overall win percentage of 30%. Leicester City, Gary McAllister. By all accounts, Gary McAllister was the top midfielder. 5 years at Leicester, 6 at Leeds, 2 at Liverpool. He was good. A pretty horrendous manager though. After failing in his 2 years as Coventry boss, he returned to management with Leeds in 2008, and then sacked after a year which included an FA Cup defeat to the postman of Histon Football Club, and a defeat in the League One playoff final, consigning the former champions of England to another season of travelling to Walsall and Yeovil Town. Liverpool, Mauricio Pellegrino. Okay, no, the correct answer here is Steve Staunton. But just to mix it up a bit, let's go for Mauricio Pellegrino. A pretty pointless signing in 2005. He played just 13 games at Liverpool and looked pretty out of his depth in every one. It's been the same story in management. In May 2012, he replaced Unai Emery at Valencia. He was sacked 6 months later. Fast forward 5 years and he's getting sacked at Southampton after winning 1 of 17 games. He's currently now the manager of CD Leganes. Man City, Niall Quinn. Now don't get me wrong, Stuart Pearce is again a strong candidate here. A man whose tactical master plan consisted of chucking the goalie up front, which is the equivalent of throwing a toaster into a fucking bath. But no, instead I'm gonna go for Niall Quinn. I'm sorry, I know this is ridiculously unfair, but rules are rules. And yes, he was once a manager for about 20 minutes. Quinn was an immensely popular centre forward at City during the 90s, scoring 76 goals in 240 games as they gained promotion to the Premier League. He's pretty much universally loved by everyone on the planet.
I think Niall Quinn is a creep.
Well, almost everyone. He stepped in as manager of Sunderland, but purely because they didn't have anyone lined up for the start of the 06-07 season. He lost all 4 games, had the club bottom of the league, and exited the League Cup against Bury. Roy Keane couldn't have come quick enough. Christ, I sound like his wife. Man United, Gary Neville. There's a few worthy nominees for this one. Brian Robson, Henning Berg, Darren Ferguson. But no, I'm gonna go with Gary Neville. Appointing Phil Neville would have been weird enough, but at least that would have had a modicum of sense. He was already working at Valencia as a coach, but going out and hiring Gary Neville straight off the telly and expecting him to inspire a push for Europe was just batshit insane. Clearly the players didn't respond well to a hyped up Mancunian screaming in their face, winning 3 of his 16 league games, keeping no clean sheets, and managing to concede 7 in 1 game. Back to the telly, Gary. Newcastle, Lee Clark. See, 6 years ago, Lee Clark would be considered one of Geordie alumni's most promising up-and-coming managers, having embarked on a 43-game unbeaten run with Huddersfield Town. Now, all that promise and potential is being stuffed down the back of the couch. Recently appointed manager of Blythe Spartans in the 6th tier of English football. The reason for this demotion is pretty simple. The former Newcastle midfielder's next 4 jobs after Huddersfield were all catastrophic disasters. In his 2 years at Birmingham, he took them from 4th in the Championship to 21st, winning 33 of his 116 games in charge. He resigned after a year at Blackpool after relegation to League One, and 3 wins in his 33 games. Then he spent a year at Kilmarnock, then 8 months at Bury before getting chucked in the biggest dustbin they could find, after leading them to 2nd bottom in League One. Norwich City, Brian Gunn. 7-1. 7-1 to Colchester on the opening day of the season. Do I really need to elaborate? Look, Brian Gunn is a great guy and a legendary cult figure at Carrow Road, having spent 12 years there as a goalie. But as a manager, he was anything but. After overseeing relegation to League One as caretaker boss 10 years ago, he was given the permanent job that summer to try and rectify his mistakes. After conceding 7 goals at home to Colchester in his first game in charge, he was swiftly booted out the door for the lad in the other dugout. Sheffield United, Steve Wigley. I'll be honest, I never saw Steve Wigley play. I barely saw him manage. But from what I can remember, it wasn't pretty. A former Sheffield United winger, Wigley, I'm sorry, I cannot take that name seriously, conspired to fail to get Aldershot promotion back in the 90s before replacing Paul Sturrock at Southampton in 2004. Imagine being coached by a man named Steve Wigley. Of course you're going to end up stuck to the foot of the league with 1 win in 14. But hey, at least that 1 win was against Portsmouth. Southampton, Gary Monk. How many more times does this lad want to be sacked? A defender who only made 11 appearances in 8 years at Southampton, Monk has managed Swansea, Leeds, Middlesbrough and Birmingham City. Hasn't lasted longer than a year in either one, and yet he's still probably going to get the Newcastle job. Tottenham, Gus Poyet. Don't get me wrong, Edgar Davids runs him close. Yes, he once player managed Barnet to relegation, and Christ above chose to wear the #1 shirt. shirt. Why didn't he just walk around with a sign saying, "Look at me, aren't I great?" But no, instead I'm gonna go for Gus Poyet, a man whose name has become synonymous with failure. His attempts at management have been about as credible as a Love Island contestant's claim to dignity. Having finished his career at White Hart Lane, he finally got a gig in management with Brighton in 2009. Superstar signing Vicente would go on to call him the worst person I've ever come across in football. Then Sunderland appointed him in October 2013, and there were highlights like a derby win and a League Cup final, but mostly he was absolutely useless in his 18 months in charge. For Christ's sake, repeatedly sticking Josie Altidore up front for 30 odd games when he clearly can't score a fucking goal is like repeatedly jamming your hand in a toaster and expecting a different result. He's since been sacked during very short spells at AK Athens, Real Betis, Shanghai Shenhua, and most recently Bordeaux, joining Alan Pardew on the stockpile of managers who'll never coach again. In 9 years as a manager, he was sacked 6 times. Watford, John Barnes. Now we all know John Barnes was a legendary footballer, god-awful manager. The former Watford hero was given the gig at Celtic Park in 1999 and it couldn't have gone much worse. He was dumped out of the Scottish Cup in the 3rd round by Inverness Caledonian Thistle, conceded 9 goals across 3 derby defeats to Rangers, and is now regarded as one of the club's worst ever managers. He's since gone on to coach Jamaica and Tranmere Rovers. Lads, believe me, the less said about them the better. West Ham, Paolo Di Canio. 2 words, Paolo Di Canio. Next. Like, whose idea was it to give Paolo Di Canio a job in management? Like, seriously. The man is mad as badgers. And yeah, it briefly worked at Swindon and I guess for a couple of games at Sunderland, but really, his time at Sunderland was just 13 games of utter madness. Wolves, Paul Ince. You didn't think I'd forgotten good old Paul Ince, did you? Great player, yes, but he's about as much a manager as his son is a Premier League footballer. Succeeding Mark Hughes at Blackburn Rovers in August 2008, he completely dismantled all the good work, losing 10 of his 17 games in charge. He's then struggled to hold down a job at MK Dons, Notts County and Blackpool, and hasn't worked in 5 years. Neither has my cousin, and now spends his days shooting birds at the train station. And so Paul, leave the pigeons alone and go teach your son how to cross a ball. So that's the end of the video, lads. I probably left out a few decent candidates. Let me know, who would you have chosen? Who is the worst manager that ever played for your club? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, share and subscribe. And as always, I'll talk to you in a while.